Hello, and welcome to the Six Figure Developer Podcast, the podcast where we talk about new and exciting technologies, professional development, clean code, career advancement, and more. I'm John Calloway.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I actually started out pretty young. I was one of those kind of nerdy kids that always kind of was a little bit of a tinkerer, but I just didn't know really what that meant. I didn't have like people around me to kind of tell me what that meant. I just knew like, hey, I played around with like my Commodore 64, so my age is showing. And I was always kind of a tinkerer, and then was able to start in tech in the early 2000s, um, when there was a really high demand and you didn't need to have be a junior developer with 15 years of experience. You could actually be a junior developer with 0 years of experience because there was such a demand for people. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started. Yeah, I took the self-taught route a little bit. I mean, I have a degree in industrial engineering, so I did take one Visual Basic course, which started me on my way. But after that, I spent my degree is actually in industrial engineering, so I
Mhm.
spent exactly 1 year as an industrial engineer. I built one AutoCAD figure, and then I moved over to become a software developer full time. Yeah. Yeah, so I actually, as you mentioned, I work with ISVs, so companies who actually build software on the Microsoft Azure platform, and startups. So I help them actually build their solutions on Azure. So I'm giving them a lot of kind of architectural guidance, talking to them about best practices, helping them kind of understand like what tools, what technologies they should use, how do they do things like achieve disaster recovery or high availability on Azure. And yeah, just kind of, and then also kind of part of my role is to provide feedback back to our product group on, you know, what was great and what could possibly need some improvements too. So that's kind of my day to day now.
Excellent. And I know that you've been speaking recently at various user groups and others about C# 9 and dotNet 5. It seems like just a short time ago that we had Mads on the program and talking with him about C# 8. And with everyone at home and dealing with whatever that means to stay safe and comfortable, time seems to have taken on a new meaning these days.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like I'm excited about the new releases of .NET 5 and C# 9. I feel like there's a lot of exciting things happening, a lot of things merging, and we're kind of getting things consolidated in a way that's really palatable for the rest of the developer community because there's been so many questions I get all the time. You know, what's .NET Core? What's .NET Framework? What's .NET Standard? And so we're finally kind of coming together with that with .NET 5, kind of one one .NET to rule them all. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, I think C Sharp 9 built a lot on C Sharp 8 and some of the cool stuff. So there's a lot of cool features around records and other things that I think will many developers will be super excited about. But I think, and I think I'm excited we've gotten now to your point in a really good cadence in terms of release schedule. So now we're kind of, every year there'll be a new release and there's, good kind of a good cadence coming.
Yeah, and before recording, we were joking saying that the cadence is either going to be way too fast for some or way too slow for others. And and honestly, I'm looking at the features, I'm looking at the items that are going to be included in C Sharp 9 and thinking that's a fair amount of work as it, you know, by itself as a standalone. But there's also all of the additional work mig to migrate the platform and to combine into the one .NET 5, the one to rule them all.
I'm sorry about
No,
my dog.
and we can pause and we can edit all
Yeah.
that out. Other
Okay.
than the live stream, we'll just let that go, and then for the podcast, we can remove all that.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
I
I've
was
I've got a dog and a kid, and
okay. No worries.
they'll probably both be in here shortly.
Okay, no worries. Okay, cool. Yeah, usually when I do these, I have him. Usually his dad is here, but
Mm.
he had to work late. So anyway, and sorry, I'm kind of
Yeah,
lost.
so I'm surprised at the number of features being released with C Sharp 9 with all of the effort and energy devoted into combining the .NETs into .NET 5 1.1.net to rule them all.
Yeah, I think, definitely the team did a lot of good work in really, listening to the community and trying to really understand what were some of the pain points. Some of, and I think also our team has done a good job at, um, like you'll see on Twitter, I love when I see some of the people from the product group like asking really like straightforward questions. How are you using this thing?
Mhm.
And I love how I've seen some people like David Fowler who are like trying to use .NET and all like deploying it to Azure, who surprisingly like and that side of the house, like they may not necessarily work in that space, but I love that we're really trying to really understand kind of how developers are using it, where they're using it, all the different use cases. So there's been a good amount of work that's been done to really kind of think from the developer's point of view and add in a lot of cool features that I think will be really great. So yeah, so records give you a nice way to do kind of initialize only type objects, right? So if you can remember before, you had to create there was a lot of overhead. If I wanted to create an object and make it in a init only kind of object, there was a lot of overhead in doing that. And C Sharp records really help you handle that in a really kind of straightforward, easy way. You can use the init keyword, which makes it very straightforward, and things like the data keyword. So really, we've really taken a look at how how do you build objects and make objects immutable, which I think for JavaScript developers, that's always kind of a key core tenet. I've been recently doing a lot of React work lately, and that's kind of the core tenet of React. And I think many developers are kind of looking for, how do I make sure that I'm creating objects in an immutable way? How do I do that? And I think C# records really kind of help, are the answer to that. Mhm. Yeah, so there's some guidance around how do you kind of mutate that object, and do kind of a inherit, or if you need to make changes to it, there's guidance around how do you do that, but you're not directly making direct changes to that instance. Yep. Yep. Mhm. I think definitely you will see huge performance benefits just in, one, they're not mutable, and two, they're immutable, and then two, just in the sheer, there's a lot more kind of lines of code and work that you had to do to achieve the same thing. Now I just use the record keyword, initialize things, and then I'm good to go. Whereas in previous versions, I could achieve somewhat similar behavior, but in more lines of code. And as I was talking with the young kids, apparently they don't like to write code. So I, think I was directly told that by one of my colleagues. It's like, why should I write code if I don't have to? So um and so that immediately made me like feel like 50 years older. So exactly, exactly. Yeah, so this is the attempt to, I could write a lot of code, but why do I have to? So yeah.
And it seems in recent years that been a really big initiative to reduce the amount of boilerplate, that reduce the
Correct.
amount of code that you have to write just to get off the ground.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's something I think has been a really big complaint from a lot of developers. And sort of as someone who grew up with C Sharp and .NET, it sort of was ingrained in me. And I kind of didn't understand that concept when developers would say that, when new developers would say that. Because I was like, yeah, you just like, because I was like, yeah, it's a lot of boilerplate, but once you know the boilerplate, like you just start building it and you go. But over the last couple of years, I've had an opportunity to work in some other programming languages and JavaScript frameworks, and I get it. I get, I get being able to just start writing JavaScript and using React framework or Vue, and in a few lines of code, I've got something, I've got a web application ready to go. So I get it. I get it now. And I think it's huge, I think, to attract more of the younger kids that like fully want to just start coding and not have to deal with all of the boilerplate, because that's sort of kind of where the developer community is right now.
So they won't know how hard we had it back in the days. We had to walk uphill both ways in the snow
Exactly. With
just
no
to get
shoes
our
on.
yeah, just to get our programs to compile.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, go back to .NET 2. I mean, it's already that
I
much
rem-
better, right?
so it's funny, like I was kind of talking about the sign of the time. So I remember when I first started uh, learning C sharp, and I remember all the C++ developers hated C and C++ developers hated C sharp because it was like not a true object oriented programming language, and there's so much hidden away from you. And I remember saying like, yeah, like I don't want to code, like I don't want to, I'm not trying to build a compiler, I'm just trying to like build a web application. Why do I need to write all that? That's, C++ requires. And literally I had the same exact conversation with someone who's, you know 10 years younger than me, that's like, why do I have to write all this code when I don't have to? And I was like, I've come full circle now, because I was kind of like, I want to see, I was like, I want to be able to step through and see kind of everything that's going on. And I was like, that's why I like to write all the code. And this person's like, why do I have to write all this code? Like, I just want to like be as efficient as possible and just go. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that my side of the fence has never bothered to change. I I used to be I kind of grew up on QBasic, Visual Basic style programming, and I learned C and C++ at one point. Even went down to assembly,
Oh,
just
wow.
because why not? I like doing things the hard way sometimes. And when C Sharp came out, I was actually afraid of it. There was a lot new stuff to learn, and I didn't understand the syntax, and none of it made any sense. And then when I finally learned C Sharp, I basically completely forgot VB and C++, other than like there's just the base syntax. And and now I look at something like the top level programs, and I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, gross. Why wouldn't you just write program main?
But like, just do it. Okay, you have that initial, it's funny, you do have that kind of like initial knee jerk reaction to it, but then like, do it do it like one time, and when you're able to just immediately start going, it's also really helpful. Like, I love top level programming, because if you're for debugging purposes or even for like illustration purposes, it's like it makes things so much easier. But I had the same like reaction, like, this feels dirty. Like everything's supposed to be in main. Like, this is not right. So I feel your pain. You should
I mean,
start a support group.
yeah. I mean, I have tried to teach a few individuals C Sharp, and the first thing that you have to tell them is, okay, this program main thing, don't worry about it. We'll get to that later. It just has to be there. And
Yeah.
I see the benefit certainly with somebody learning the language. Like, you can just be like, okay, here's what we're going to do: console dot write line hello world, boom, you're
Yep.
done, right? Like, that's awesome. And I can see some benefit with like your program.cs, the stuff that normally goes in main just kind of being there, and main and
Right.
program not really being there. But it is going to take some time to get used to, because it does feel really weird. It feels more like Python or QBasic or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I always struggle a little bit with making sure that people understand the foundation of whatever, like that would be like my core advice. Shortcuts, efficient programming is fine, but know what you're writing and why you're writing it. And so sometimes my initial knee jerk reaction to not wanting to do that is really mainly just because, like, when I see the code and I see everything happening, then I feel like I understand it better, but then you can go to the efficient programming. But sometimes I worry about oversimplifying things for new
Mhm.
developers, because I feel like you know, this could be old lady shouting at the kids to get off her lawn. But I worry about, like, hey, are you really actually capturing the concepts and understanding the language, or are you being more just kind of procedural? So I don't know,
Yeah,
but
we want programmers that know
mhm.
the libraries and the framework and the language that they're in, not people who only know jQuery.
Correct, absolutely. But that's right, kids. So now get off our lawns and
So with
Another, or, go ahead, John.
so with the features of C Sharp 9 that we're looking at in reading the bulleted list and the details to come, the standout feature for C Sharp 8, and the one that the community really latched onto immediately and got all the press, was nullable reference types. Is there a go-to feature for C Sharp 9? Is there one that the community is absolutely going to go wild about?
I think we kind of covered, like, definitely records
Mhm.
seem to be like the thing that I think is getting the most buzz around C Sharp. I mean, as I said, there's I think there's been a lot of features or a lot of thought around immutable, making things immutable. So I think there's kind of that underlying theme. And then also, kind of cover top level programs, which I think definitely is probably a cool thing. So yeah, I think it's that there's this recurring theme of immutability and really just kind of efficient coding, which I think traditionally C Sharp has really gotten a bad rap about being neither one of those. So I'm hoping that it'll take some time to percolate through to everyone, but I'm hoping that really we're able to bring in more developers because of these kind of features.
All right. I had a question about at least one more of the new features coming in C Sharp 9.
Yep.
Covariant returns. I didn't know this was a thing. I just saw it in our show notes that we've got. So is this something like where if a method is supposed to return a list of iFruit, that I can build a list of oranges and then return that without having to cast it, or is it something else?
Um, I think you've got it pretty close. So, um, it provides you the ability to override that. So if I've got, like, yes, correct. If I have like iFruit and I want to return oranges or bananas, either way, that's all legal now. Yeah, so essentially that is correct.
Okay, that's awesome then, because that's, once you get into using generics and stuff like that, the return type casting can get really annoying. So
Yeah, yeah, that like kind of having to do thing to and back and back again is, and then if you've got like several inheritance objects, then it gets even horrible, more horrible. So yeah, this is definitely a cool feature that will definitely help a lot.
awesome. Thank
Oh,
you.
I think I'm gonna get in trouble with that one pretty quick.
It's going to get me out of
Yes.
trouble. I've been doing like reflection and expression
Yeah.
trees and generic types out the wazoo lately, and that specific issue has caused me some pain recently, and I had to do reflection in order to be able to cast the thing to the proper thing so that the method wouldn't bomb when I executed it which you could only find out at runtime because it was using reflection and expression trees.
That seems like a lot. Yeah, no.
Clayton, he likes to do the complicated things and the things he probably shouldn't do
What are you
in
talking about?
code, in building a car from scratch, casting
All
an
right.
block, you know.
That's all right. That's how we learn. we do it the long way, and then we and then we figure out the shorter way. So it's called programming.
I had a very specific need at the company that I work for to basically build my own ORM.
Okay, cool. All right. Did you we have a thing called Entity Framework.
It's actually
I don't
built
know if
on
you've heard
top
of
of
it.
Entity Framework, but
Oh, fancy.
yeah, so my manager wanted to be able to use parameters passed in on the query string in order to manipulate the values that were being filtered and selected from Entity Framework. And
So that's OData, right?
it's basically OData, but then they killed that, right? Effectively. It's
still
kind of on
around.
the way out. But anyway, it's better than OData because not only can it do that, it can generate an anonymous object on the fly that has only the things that you asked to select in your query string.
Wait, that's graph.
Ta-da!
That is funny. Like you figure out something, like you figure out this fancy abstraction of something, and then like something else comes out that like completely blows it out of the water. It's like, so that's why I got out of the abstracting all these things away, even though what you said, it sounds pretty cool. And I think I did something kind of similar several years ago, because I wanted to I wanted to create this very generic architecture and abstract a lot of things out. So users kind of were returning things in a little bit more straightforward way. But then, yeah, something else came out, and I was like, oh, all right, so that 10,000 lines of code I wrote is useless now, but cool.
That's the fun. Is I don't know. I've written a repository pattern usually on top of Entity Framework just to kind of abstract Entity Framework, and I've written it probably 100 times in the last 10 years or so, and every time it gets a little bit better. But you know, one of these times there's something that's going to get released and it's going to completely obsolete anything that excuse me. Ooh,
Well, yeah, I mean,
anything that I've done.
how many times did I write, oh, sorry. How many times did I write MVC? and then ASP.NET MVC? Like I must have built so many different applications where I wrote a whole entire the MVC framework, and then like ASP.NET MVC came out, and it was
Should
like,
have
oh.
packaged it up and sold it.
I know, like that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm getting really good at the line of business CRUD apps. 20 years. Like I'm finally getting the hang of it.
Yep.
It only took 20 years of writing the same app.
Right. Yeah. Well, the language features changed every once in a while. So with that, we've talked about record types or records, top level programs, covariant returns. Are there other features that you're particularly excited about, or are those covered it from what we've spoken about already?
So I think there's some things just in general in .NET. There's a couple in the .NET 5 release. There's some things, some huge kind of performance improvements just kind of underneath the covers. So like things with string patterns that kind of make manipulating string like really basic stuff, but underneath the covers got kind of a huge facelift. The other thing that I think I'm like excited about too is just there's been a lot of looking kind of at the .NET framework to kind of reduce some of the bloat and some of the kind of size. So you can do things like single file publish. there's some things that you can do to actually kind of reduce the overall size of how it compiles and the size of what gets pushed out. So there's a lot of things like that that kind of uh, make your overall application just from a size wise much smaller. So I think I'm excited about that as well because again, like one of the things that we've heard a lot about is just around just overall kind of bloat um, with C# or with .NET and what gets published out. So that's super exciting to see.
So with .NET 5 coming up soon, what should we be doing to prepare for that release? Like a .NET framework developer versus a .NET Core developer.
Yeah, so I think there's some key things that are coming out. So one thing I always like to talk about what's kind of not going to be around anymore. So there's a couple of things that are key. Um, so like web forms is not going to be around in .NET 5 or sorry. So things like when WCF server and Windows workflow will be only in .NET Framework 4.8, so they're not going to be carried forward. So this is now, so if you're a web forms developer, it's time to get on the ASP.NET MVC bandwagon or Blazor. So
Definitely.
yeah, definitely get on the Blazor. I highly encourage that. And eventually there'll be, I'm told there'll be some migration guides that are coming out as we get closer to November for developers who are moving from various .NET frameworks looking to move to .NET 5. There'll certainly be some tooling maybe that will help with some of the migrations, although always use those with a grain of salt. Um, Things like for those who are still using WCF or Windows Workflow, highly recommend looking at gRPC. So definitely something I think this is I think what's also exciting is that there's always those stragglers for whatever reason. I get it, like maintaining code is hard, and you've got an awesome web forms application, and there's not been really a reason to change it. But I think this is a good time to really start thinking about some of those newer technologies such as Blazor and gRPC that definitely kind of take your application into and help you modernize it. So
I haven't done anything with WCF in years, but I'm a little surprised that it is going away and not simply adding like a gRPC endpoint.
yeah, that's interesting. I should just check, but it's from what I was told, it's not that it's just not going to be supported or it's not going to be in future releases. So .NET Framework 4.8 is the last one for WCF server. But yeah, I would be interested to see if there would be kind of a different endpoint. But as far as I can tell, that's not there.
Time to go potty.
It's time to go potty.
It's time to go potty.
Is that for?
That's
is
for
that
my
for
3-year-old.
you
Yeah.
Oh,
It could be
are
for
you
me.
sure it's
Maybe I
not
should
for
go.
you?
Yeah. No. I guess I can totally see that they would decommission WCF. It's just the way that WCF was originally designed was that it was an extensible platform for really any kind of endpoint that needed to be created for a service to call and do things or get data. So I'm a little surprised that wouldn't be their first option, even though I haven't done WCF in years. So maybe there's less call for it these days.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not,
I was going to also say that I would be super excited if Microsoft would put out conversion guidelines and maybe even some tooling for web forms to Blazor, because where I work now, we still have an ASP.NET, sorry, not ASP.NET, ASP Classic application that we are pretty much no longer able to even transform. I tried for months. No, not going to happen. So to not have your web forms apps, which there are still loads of enterprise companies that have a web forms app, to not have that essentially die on the vine because the world has moved on, would be nice to be able to transform it instead of have to start over.
yeah, I mean, I've I agree. I think though we've had tools before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is before, right? This is before before when I was converting from web forms to MVC. Uh, the tools are okay. If we could get some tools that fit a lot of scenarios, I think that would be awesome. I just think sometimes it's very, very difficult to build something that fits. Yeah, because generally, if you think about it, not to say you, but generally, if you're using web forms, like if I think about, it could be just, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Which if that's if that's the reasoning for kind of not moving, then that's great. But generally sometimes I see you're not moving from web forms to MVC or to Blazor because there's some very interesting code that you have going on that make it very, very difficult. But I think at least if nothing else, maybe not an automagic tool, but better like guidance, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get from I'm here and how do I get there? And having some kind of like white paper guidance on that would be like super helpful, because I think there's some things that are coming out right now for moving from like MVC to Blazor or from other technologies over to Blazor. So that would be good.
Yeah, structurally, web forms and Blazor are not that far apart. So aside from third-party components or custom components that you've built in-house, which you would have to either rebuild or find an alternative for, I'm hoping that the transition from web forms to Blazor would be relatively simple. I know there's going to be gotchas, but like the structure is not that much different.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you say that, because I remember seeing Blazor for the first time, and I got a little bit confused because I was like, wait, those are Razor files. And I was like, wait, I was like, wait, this is we're back to web forms again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is a lot of similarity, but yeah, there's also kind of the kind of how things are the conventions are very, very different. So but it will take some getting used to, but that's an actually interesting project. I should take that on. I've got some old I got some old web form projects. I should try to upgrade them to Blazor and talk about the experience.
If
Yeah,
you
and
do,
I
I
know.
would you'd send me a link to either the video or the article, because we've got a fairly large web forms app where I work, and
Yeah.
the end goal is to convert it to Blazor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, and Jeff Fritz is working on stream sometimes on projects to create Blazor components that seem to be mimicking web forms components. So there's an
Yes, I've
entire
seen.
library that he's putting together.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's a good point. Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff that he's been doing that's been pretty interesting. So, yeah, that might actually be a good kind of GitHub project to kind of try and take a web forms project and just see what happens.
So what's next for you? Or do you have any other speaking engagements or anything else exciting coming up?
Yeah, so actually, on September 26th, we are doing .NET Code Camp, our DC dot, or sorry, DC Code Camp. It's not necessarily .NET focused, but so we have DC Code Camp where and it's all virtual. We're going to have several tracks around cloud and web development, and all free. So I'm actually going to be one of the MCs for the event, along with speaking. So I'll be talking about Project Tie, actually, and kind of microservices with .NET. But there's a lot of great talks. Everything from Microsoft Graph. There's some talks around, uh, you know, .NET, ML.NET. There's a ton of really, really, really good talks that are there. So definitely highly encourage people to dial in. It's all free, all free and available. So that'll be fun on the 26th.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Project High is another one of those that I'm really interested in and keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, I've been playing around with it, and it's actually pretty cool. Like I have to admit I was a little late to the containers bandwagon, just because I just there was other stuff going on, so I was kind of a little late to the containers bandwagon. But I think if you're like me, you're a .NET developer, Project Tie is really cool for kind of getting you into containers.
So for those looking to get more details, more exposure to what's coming in .NET 5 and C Sharp 9, do you have any resources that you might point them towards?
Yeah, so I will. We've got some posts out on our docs.microsoft site, as well as devblogs.microsoft.com sites that have kind of everything that's coming up with .NET and C Sharp. There's also if you look, and I'll make all of these available and for your show notes. But if you actually go out to because it's all open source now. So if you actually go out to the C Sharp language GitHub repo, you can actually see the features that are planned for all the releases. So you can actually see go out to the issues list, and you can actually see all the what's in 9. You can actually see what's even being planned for C Sharp 10. So
Wow.
I highly encourage. It's just interesting to kind of see like the planning happening before your eyes. So highly encourage people to go check that out.
All right. What has been helpful in your career that you might share with those getting started or looking to level up their careers?
I think what's really always been helpful for me is really being intentional about like allocating time to learn, because we all have a lot going on, even though we're stuck in our houses now. um, we all have a lot going on. You've got families, you've got a job, you've got everything. But I think what's been really key in my career has been finding those hours that I dedicate to ongoing learning, and being sort of very strict about uh like, for a while it was kind of Saturday mornings, where Saturday mornings, like, you know, 9 to 11, I would like dial in on a Pluralsight course or Udemy course or something like I just always allocated that time. And I was my single days, and then I recently got married. So now some of those hours got shifted from Saturday mornings, but always just making that time, because I think learning technology it's no different, and training your mind to learn constantly new technology as it comes. It's sort of like working out, right? It's something that you gotta practice and practice at constantly, and you can't really stop, right? Like what happens when I'm speaking from from knowing like what happens when you stop working out for 2 or 3 months. Then it's like that next month trying to get back into it is extremely difficult. And it's the same thing when you sort of, if you take 3 or 4, and I'm not saying sometimes you do need a mental break from tech. Definitely take that as well. If I find if you're not constantly kind of exercising that tech learning muscle, that it makes things harder. So I think just kind of being intentional in your time to kind of learn, and also being intentional in your time of just like getting away from it is super important.
Yeah, that is pretty important. And like you said, somehow being locked up in the house all day long did not add extra time to be available.
No.
So you really have to make the time. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I thought that for, once I got over I'm stuck in the house, I was like, like everyone else, and was like, oh, this will be great. Like I'll be able to start all these all these GitHub projects that I just gave a title and a README to. Like I'll finally able to really write some code on them. And yeah, like a lot of that didn't happen, but I felt like I had to go back and start treating this just like I would any other time, and scheduling that time, and taking breaks when I needed to. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Speaking of GitHub, do you have any social media accounts that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so everything is Chicks Can Code, CHIX Can Code. So my Twitter account is Chicks Can Code. Feel free to follow me. I tweet about mostly tech stuff, and unfortunately or fortunately, football is back. So I also tweet a lot about football stuff on Sundays. Sorry if you're not a American football fan. And then GitHub is also Chicks Can Code, CHIX Can Code. So definitely, yeah, feel free to follow me or check out anything that I'm working on.
All right. Thanks, LaBrina. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys selecting me, and it's been great chatting with you.
That was LaBrina Loving. LaBrina is a senior software engineer at Microsoft with over 18 years of experience in the Microsoft stack. In her role, she is focused on helping startups and ISVs migrate to Azure and modernize their SaaS solutions for cloud.
If you like this episode, please like, rate, and review on iTunes.
Find show notes, blog posts, and more at sixfiguredev.com.
And catch us live each week on Twitch, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at sixfiguredev.
This has been another episode of the Six Figure Developer Podcast, helping others reach their potential. I am John Calloway.
And I'm Clayton Hunt.